Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Spotlight on Security Tech Insights. Today, we are going to take a look at industry insights into generative AI, data, and security with Cohesity and NVIDIA. Think about this for a minute. As the benefits of generative AI become more understood and the technology is adopted, it's important to continue to be knowledgeable and understand the latest trends. But the other critical piece is to be aware of both data and security trends together around AI. These are going to have business benefit and impact that are critical to keep in mind. My name is Theresa Miller. I am the Senior Director of Technical Marketing here at Cohesity, and today I am joined by my guest, Matheen Raza. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Matheen Raza. I'm a Principal Product Marketing Manager at NVIDIA, and I work on NVIDIA AI software and work with our enterprise customers and partners to bring AI solutions to market.
I am just so excited to talk about this with you today. I know you have some really deep insights to share with our audience. So let's start with your thoughts, Matheen, around the industry perspective on generative AI.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Teresa. And the industry perspective on generative AI, right? It has evolved. Like this, it's evolved from this initial hype that we saw with the launch and announcement of ChatGPT from OpenAI to today. What I'm seeing with enterprise customers is a more pragmatic understanding of the practical applications of AI. What we're seeing is the view is shifting from this technology being a novelty where everybody's trying to experiment and see how they can use it to more measured responses with companies taking an approach where they're trying to understand the ROI of a particular project before simply experimenting. And this is understandable because there are practical implications to simply experimenting, because this just implementing something could be costly. And on the other hand, there are still those concerns around intellectual property and the fear that this could displace and replace jobs. There's growing recognition within the enterprises that generative AI and AI technology in general will augment rather than replace human creativity within the enterprise. And what I'm seeing across the board is the more successful organizations are approaching this strategically. They're addressing these ethical concerns and building these into their plans, while at the same time, they are building the infrastructure, the tooling, the skills, and services necessary to really harness this technology. Now, from a use cases standpoint, what we're seeing is it's moving away from the simple query response generative AI type use cases to more building of AI agents that can actually complete tasks. And some of these are complex multi-step tasks and workflows that we are seeing people build autonomous systems around. And we're broadly calling this agentic AI. And agentic AI moves beyond the simple query response of generative AI and solves multi-step complex tasks. Um, an agentic AI system will be able to not just provide a response, but be able to perceive and understand what a particular query is about, and then take a plan of action for based on what was asked. For instance, if I ask the system, "Hey, can you tell me about this customer that I met a couple of weeks back?" The system should understand that it has to go and uh, send a query to a bunch of different tools and then get the response from these tools and summarize and provide me that response. So it's able to plan, execute, and then learn from what it has done. So once it has taken an action, whether that action was successful or whether that action required improvement, it learns from that and improves its execution. So it's a full cycle feedback loop that we're seeing implemented across these different enterprises.
I really find the evolution of what you shared to be very interesting because I think that some enterprises are still stuck in the mode of AI is just what like a chat GPT can offer.
Mhm.
And so the fact that you have insights into what some of the more mature organizations are doing and can share that really does, I think, show the evolution around the maturity of where this technology is going. I
Absolutely.
really find it also super interesting that it's going to be able to do problem solving. And I can think of even one example where I've seen this recently, where the agentic AI was able to recommend policies that could then, in return, protect systems or back them up. So, and I'm sure there's much more complex ways that agentic AI can solve problems, but it's going to be very useful. I also don't see AI as a job replacement. I know there's a lot of conversation around that. I think it should enhance what you're doing
Mhm.
from a job perspective, and I think it'll be a long time before there's any reality around replacement of jobs, if
Yes.
ever.
Mhm. That's right. Yeah.
So, okay, so let's transition to the next question. And I think this ties into enterprises even more, is what is the actual enterprise perspective on adopting AI and leveraging its benefits?
Yeah, so from a technical implementation standpoint, what we are seeing is there's a strategic bifurcation, if you will, of implementation approaches. Right? For enterprises who can use hosted model service providers, they're doing so. They're building applications around making API calls to a hosted model service provider. This would be your OpenAI, Anthropic, or any other hosted model service provider. For those who require, for data sovereignty or other reasons, to deploy models in their own on-premises data centers, or wherever they are hosting their data centers, right? They are looking to deploy some of these open source models. Right? There's a lot of innovation that's happening in the open source community as well. They are looking to deploy these open source models in their on-premise locations. And from a use case standpoint, the way enterprises are looking at it is there are these dual imperatives. One, how does it affect the top line? The second is how does it affect the bottom line? Does it affect either of those? And eventually, you want to see profits at the end of a particular project, and you want profits in one form or the other, whether it's customer experience metrics that have been impacted or direct impact to productivity gains that can be then attributed back to your top line or bottom line. Now, there's a few common use cases that we've seen, right, from that standpoint. And the most common that I see is a contact center or customer support, where AI systems now authenticate customers and are able to provide these responses to transactional queries. Right? You still want the more complex queries and more complex questions to go through your human operators. But in a contact center, for instance, if you're a telco provider and you are managing a contact center, a lot of these questions are basic billing questions, but then they still go through the flow of authenticating users, users having to wait at least 5 minutes before they're fully authenticated and they can talk to a human representative. And at the end of the call, the amount of time the human representative would have had to spend looking up stuff would be longer than the time it took to actually respond to the user's question. So by automating these basic questions, you can save the human operator to handle the more complex issues. That way, you're also improving your customer satisfaction, but at the same time, you're improving the productivity of your human agents as well. And we've seen with some customers, they've been able to reduce the average handle time for a particular call or for a particular incident by 30 to 40% while improving the call resolution times. So on one side, they improve productivity of the human operators, but at the same time, they're able to deliver better customer experience. And eventually, that's going to lead to increased revenue, one way or the other. It's either CSAT has improved, customer retention has improved, your reputation in the market has improved, and thereby you get more users, you retain your customers, and you're able to see increased revenue as a result of that. So that's an example of a use case that directly impacts the end customer experience while at the same time impacting employee productivity. Now let's look at a use case that's really about productivity gains. We're seeing a lot of interest in AI-based research assistants. And what do I mean by this? Generative AI and this technology is really, really good at summarizing knowledge bases. So take, for instance, a research organization, and we all do research at our desk, right? We are reading through documents, reading to different resources within our organization. Some organizations do this more than others. A research organization like a scientific lab, maybe they read a lot of papers. A law firm, for instance, would be reading a lot of different documents, not just documents from a particular case that they are handling right now, but also reviewing case documents from previous cases as well. So by using an AI powered knowledge system, you can really revolutionize the information retrieval and provide not just contextual data that goes for a particular case, but also be able to find um, connections that previously a human operator may not have been able to find. This would really unlock huge productivity gains. We think about it, it could take, what could take hours or even days could now be done in a matter of minutes, right? And significantly improve productivity gains and directly impact the earnings of a company. And from a technology standpoint, underpinning all of these different use cases, these two different use cases that I shared, is a technique called retrieval augmented generation. Now, while LLMs are great at providing and summarizing responses, they don't have the contextual enterprise information. And augmented generation is an architectural technique to provide a large language model with that enterprise context by building a repository from the enterprise knowledge base and being able to provide the large language model that the relevant information as a user prompt comes in is how retrieval augmented generation works. And this is ensuring that the outputs from a large language model or a generative AI system are relevant and accurate and are grounded in certain organizational truths.
That was a really great way to share the user perspective and enterprise perspective. Because again, I think that there's a lot of maturity around that mindset, and those use cases that you shared really show that you, as your organization has evolved, you're spending time with the customer
Mhm.
to understand what problems can be solved that are useful, that not only have a cost advantage, but a time savings. And you and I'll talk a little bit more about how Cohesity and NVIDIA are doing this together a little bit later during our talk. But I think those are some great use cases that are more common that enterprises can be thinking about doing today.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about gaps. Are there actual gaps in the tooling that enterprises are using today that AI can help solve?
Yes. Yes. So while this technology is great, right? RAG is certainly a great piece of technology. As I discussed earlier, the key to success with RAG, with large language models and with generative AI is data, right? And providing this data can be a challenge, right? Often enterprise data is siloed in the cloud, on premises, or at other endpoints wherever the work is happening, the data gets stored there, right? And then, in addition to being able to bring the data to your AI, there also needs to be the security and governance around this data. Who gets to access it? What files get to access? What sort of information do you need to mask from this AI? All of those considerations need to be built into any system that you're building. And from my conversations with enterprise customers, the first stumbling block they hit is data security, governance, and privacy. Right, for a lot of these enterprises, data is those are their crown jewels. They need to protect them. They'll be liable if they do not protect that data. And the second stumbling block from a technology standpoint is bringing in the right set of skilled resources and being able to iterate through and build with these open source models, especially for the ones who want to deploy on premises, and having the right software expertise around it as well. And once they solve those problems, it's about ensuring that there's an end-to-end security for the applications that you build as well. Right? Who gets to access them? What do you do when some malware or some malevolent actor gets access to your particular system? How do you handle that? And how do if there are circuit breakers in place to break away from that? Now, this is where enterprises need guardrails to control, to place some control around the models as well as to what predictions the models can do. These are some of the ethical considerations that I discussed earlier, and enterprises need to be able to address them. And at the end of the day, enterprises need to have the right tools, controls, and the people in place to manage these applications. So a lot of it is also ensuring that the folks who are going to be interacting with these models and the folks who are going to be operating these models or these applications that are built with these models have the right training to do so and are able to recognize issues when they occur. And this is where they need to be able to bring that enterprise grade control that they have of the rest of their IT estate to these applications as well. And designing that in is one of the challenges that our enterprise customers are looking to us for solutions.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point around the ethics. You definitely want to make sure that whatever AI is outputting is aligned ethically and is not offensive. I think it's also interesting that you mentioned the guardrails around, I think AI as a whole, ensuring that there aren't any vulnerabilities that actually are taking advantage of the actual deployment or even out in the wild.
Mhm.
So, great key points for our audience today. So, let's talk about what our listeners should be considering around data security, and AI.
Yeah, so as you alluded to, data security and management of data is a key consideration here. And when implementing AI solutions, organizations must prioritize a comprehensive data security strategy. Enterprise-grade RAG systems and frameworks require careful architectural planning to ensure that sensitive information is properly managed. And I talked about this earlier, making sure that you have a robust PII detection masking system to ensure that you don't expose your personal and sensitive information to even the developers or to this AI system that could then get out. You really don't understand how it could be used. So you want to mask those particular fields within your data set to make sure you don't expose that to these AI systems. And we're seeing some of the leading organizations deploy metadata enriched content repository structures that have granular role-based access controls for these systems. So even within these agentic systems, which agent can access which piece of information is being codified into these systems. An example of that would be, for instance, if you have a specific tool or an agent that's working with your marketing data, you don't want agent to have access to specific fields, even within that data set or within a different data set of the financial information from a particular user or customer or even your own employees. So you want to be able to make sure that you have those fine-grained access controls built into this system that you're building. And then governing the data governance should not just be an afterthought and a checkbox item for compliance purposes. It should be the foundational element of responsible AI deployment. Because your enterprise data represents intellectual property, intellectual IP for your customers, for your enterprise as well. Right? You want to make sure that this is protected. So you want to implement data lineage tracking, provenance checks, implementing approval workflows for these different AI data training sets, right? And maintaining a comprehensive audit trail so you can understand where a particular change was made, how data flows across these different AI systems. Now, equally critical is implementing an effective change management system as well. Your AI systems are only going to be as effective as the data that you feed them. So you want to make sure that the data that gets fed into these AI systems is current and is free from errors. So there needs to be some sort of audit trail, some sort of flows that will check the authenticity and the validity of the data that comes in. And at the same time, you also want to put some checks on the system as well to make sure that the system is generating relevant inputs, relevant outputs at all times. And you want to make sure that you have some form of drift detection when the system deviates beyond what's an acceptable response. You want to be alerted. Some human operator or someone who's managing that system needs to be alerted ahead of time, and they need to be able to take action as well.
So as you're sharing all of this, it actually has me excited to just move on to our final question. Like that was just so well stated. And everything you highlighted revolves around what we're doing together in our partnership. So let's talk about that a little bit. So data and data security in this are in the same vein as AI. We've partnered, right? NVIDIA's partnered with us, and that's led to the creation of a product called Cohesity Gaia. So Matheen, let's just start with you. What can you share about the collaboration and the problems we are solving with the product? And I'll jump in here as well after.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this collaboration between NVIDIA and Cohesity with Gaia, because this really brings two complementary pieces of this puzzle to deliver a solution for our enterprise customers. Where NVIDIA, we provide the accelerated computing and these performance optimized models with NVIDIA NIM, which are a set of easy to use microservices that provide a secure and easy way to deploy AI models. It saves a, and NIM by using NIM, I talked about the interest that enterprises have in using open source models. NIM provides an easy way to adopt open source models. It's a secure container, and we handle a lot of the security, the compliance, making sure any CVEs or vulnerabilities that are detected get patched, and we fully back and support these models. This is what our enterprise customers have been asking for. They want to use these open source models, but they want somebody to back it up and support them, especially in managing all the security vulnerabilities that are sometimes exposed in open source tooling. And at the same time, it's it really makes it easy to get started with. It saves the users a lot of effort in building their own open source model runtimes. We package these up as containers that users can just deploy and get started almost instantly. And our NIM models are built on our open source innovations such as Triton RT LLM, which result in a performance optimized models. And performance is a moment in time kind of a thing, but still we've seen lower latency across the board when we deploy our models with NIM. And this makes a huge difference for our enterprise customers, right? Our enterprise customers are looking for ROI and cost benefit of these AI systems. So they want to be able to make sure that the expensive infrastructure that they're buying for AI is fully utilized, and at the same time they're delivering a good user experience to their end customers. So the performance really matters when it comes to deploying AI applications for production. So these, I'm really excited because this brings two complementary technologies together to deliver value for our end customers.
So in terms of us leveraging your solution, we're leveraging the re-ranker services as well as the document parser, your AI enterprise solution. And between leveraging all of these core components, it's enhancing the quality and speed of the output. Now, part of why I was getting really excited and what was really resonating with me about what you shared when you were answering the previous question is, one, it starts with your data. So from a data perspective, when you're a Cohesity customer, we already have your data, and we're leveraging the metadata specifically when we're helping with the queries that you are doing with Cohesity Gaia. So we already have the data. So that decision is already made for you. Now, take it a step further. We have role-based access. So from a role-based access perspective, no one's going to have access or visibility into the data that they shouldn't have. So when you were talking about marketing people having access to financial, those definitions are made by the person who's putting together the data set. It just, the separation of information is there. And then you were also talking about a little bit earlier, you were talking about some of the use cases. So
Mhm.
one of the really core common use cases that we're solving is around security, governance, compliance. So you had mentioned legal teams. So your legal team could get access to a data set and they could search for information on a case or a litigation or a compliance issue within a matter of minutes, depending on the depth. Maybe it'll go into hours, but it's certainly not going to take the weeks and months that it's taking people to do this manually today. So with the power of our two solutions working together, the output and outcome is just outstanding. So
Yes.
before we wrap up today, Mateen, can you just share one key takeaway for our audience?
Yes. If if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this discussion is that yes, data is key, and data is really important for AI workloads. And open source models are great, and there's an easy way to use open source models with NVIDIA NIM and Cohesity and NVIDIA coming together to build a solution that brings data to AI and manages all of that very securely.
Thank you so much, Mateen. Thank you for joining me today. I'm just so glad you could be here with me.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be part of this.
And thank you to our audience for joining. That wraps up another episode of Spotlight on Security Tech Insights.